Well, good morning, everyone. What beautiful weather, what a beautiful city. For those that travel from the Northeast, welcome to what the Sun Belt is all about. Great weather, just a great place. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. I'm now going to just open this up first with setting the stage for today. Throughout the day, we're going to have a deep dive in a lot of the topics I'm going to talk about. I'm going to do a mashup of some very important topics we need to discuss, and so for me, it's a privilege to be here. As Daniel mentioned, I served as Parks Commissioner, and I have to say, being a planner all my life, that was a bit of a change for me. But I remember when the mayor of New York City reached out to me and said, would you consider the job? And I said, I'm not sure. I'm a planner. Parks is 80% operations and 20% planning. I'm a planner, and they said, that's why I want you. And so, when I did accept the position, a lot of my planner friends said, oh, you're such a sellout. How could you leave planning and go to parks? That really hurt my feelings, but I had a little bit revenge when I opened up the conference in 2017 in New York, because being Parks Commissioner, you get to open parks and cut a ribbon, and people literally hug you for opening up a park. In my entire career as a planner, no one ever hugged me for creating a comprehensive plan. So if you want a hug, open up a park, open up a greenway. So I'm here really just to open things up and to share with you the amazing career that I have had, whether it's parks or planning. I'm going to share with you the work I was able to do in Raleigh, North Carolina. When I was hired, they kind of called Raleigh sprawly and Mayberry, and I was hired to figure out how to really prepare for the future. So some of the topics I'll be covering today, and again, you'll have a deeper dive later today, is kind of setting the stage to quickly go over some emerging trends we need to be aware of, talking about this planning with purpose. I want to talk about the Safe Streets Challenge because that's what the summit is all about. Share with you the blueprint for growth, what we're able to do in Raleigh, North Carolina, and some examples in other places. Placemaking, really understanding what that is. And then connecting this land use and transportation was absolutely key. And then I'll end with understanding the value of land, which I'm sure more people have heard about, return on investment, but how it was able to influence the work that we were able to do. And then I'm sure I'll be opening it up for questions. So first, I want to lay the ground. First, hello to a lot of my friends in the audience. I didn't realize this was somewhat of a homecoming. I saw Wyatt and Jill from APA and Dan Burton, who I've known from years ago, Victor Dover, and then Karina Ricks, who used to work for me. Karina, I know you're in the room, so happy to see you. And then met Veronica Davis in person for the first time, and she signed my book, so I really feel privileged about that. So we have a lot of friends. So let me talk about these emerging trends, and I've been using this slide for well over 15 years, and it changes. It's important that we in our profession need to watch these trends like a stockbroker watches the market. We need to advise our citizens and elected officials about what's coming. And the reason why I like this, to understand these emerging trends, is because you can't Google to find the solutions for these problems. They're emerging, and I just highlighted a couple. We have aging infrastructure. We have to talk about the future of mobility, extreme heat and weather events. Because of what's happening in California and other places, they're moving to states like Florida. The droughts, wildfires, housing affordability and attainability, which has a direct correlation to transit. Whether you're on one side of the aisle or the other, we're all going to experience some unpredictability and uncertainty about laws and policies. We have to be nimble and pivot because we just don't know what's going to happen. And our residents expect us to still solve problems regardless of what happens at the federal government. The one that I'm very concerned about and don't know, big question mark, is what is the future of artificial intelligence and how that will affect our lives. So those are some of the macro emerging trends we're going to deal with, and as I stated, it's going to change year after year. In terms of some of the key challenges for your region, there's no question you're going to continue to grow. When I came to Raleigh, North Carolina, we were growing about 10,000 new residents a year, both births and people migrating, and that was a huge challenge for us. And with that, we knew we had to look for more housing and services and transport and infrastructure and facilities to accommodate that growth. And we knew that we could not build our way out of congestion. We had to find more mobility options in order for people to move and live within our region. But we also knew that land was finite. We had a specific supply, and we had to think about how we're going to plan for that precious resource of land. And what we allow to go on it and how we move between those places was critically important. And in your region, you're constrained by environmentally constrained areas about how you grow. And then we'll know over time, housing and transportation costs combined will burden many, many people about where they're going to live. So the question for all of you is that what will the next generation of your communities look like as we move into the future? I do want to kind of set the table to kind of know your market. It's so important because as people migrate here, and you're a state where people are moving from other places, we need to know who we're planning for. And a couple of things that we often don't talk about knowing your market, the graying and browning of America. I remember when we first started this phenomenon, they call it the silver tsunami. They didn't name it after me, but there's this silver tsunami happening, changing in household types, and then the rise of single-person households, not just seniors, but across the board. But what's relevant to you here in Florida, because you're a place where a lot of people are retiring, is that by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over the age of 65. And by 2050, the number of Americans over 85 will triple from roughly 5 million to 19 million Americans. And the challenge with that is on average 600,000 people over the age of 70 stop driving. Now, the CDC just named isolation as a huge health crisis. How will these individuals move through your region? Or will they be isolated? Or we'll have what we call the Golden Girl suburbs. This is a challenge that we're all going to have to face as we see our aging population not being able to drive. How are they going to move in our region when we have a sprawled out region with the only way to move is by car? In terms of other changes we see, historically, the people getting married for whatever reason, that has been dropping steadily since the 1960s. I'll never forget, I was in a presentation at a college giving this presentation. I saw this young man talking to this young woman. I told the young lady, he's not serious. Don't pay attention. How do I know? This chart tells me so. For whatever reason, people are delaying getting married or not getting married any longer. We're seeing a rise in pets. People may not get married, but they'll have a pet. But we're now seeing less and less people, and that trend continues now into the 2020s. As I stated, the sole person households is not boomers alone. You're seeing it across the board. And so the type of housing and mobility choices people are looking for is dramatically changing. People no longer just want a single family home. They may not want to buy a single family home, and we have to be able to deliver those different options for people and then how they're going to basically move one to the other. This chart is not new. You all know about these generations. I'm saddened that the greatest generation will no longer be with us in a matter of years, as now they're approaching 100 years and older, and we're seeing the rise of the Generation Alpha. But what moved me about the greatest generation, which defined them, is that this was a generation that gave their today for our tomorrow. And sadly today, the trend is we're going to give this generation's tomorrow for our today. And we have to stop that trend and really, really congratulate the courage of the greatest generation. The reason why I'm sharing you about this market is that as we look to build cities and places and communities, different generations have different values, needs, and aspirations. And we have to understand our market so that we can prepare for these growing trends. Some people, believe it or not, don't want to own a car. They want mobility options. They do not want to add any more impact to our climate. And so we have to understand that people are moving here to Florida. They have different expectations for housing. They have different expectations for mobility, and we have to be nimble enough in order to provide those options. So as I stated, I am a planner. I am so proud I chose my profession. To me, it's one of those defining professions that is interconnected and interrelated to everything we have in our places, our communities, our towns, and our cities. And so I have about 4 top-line bullets I want to share with you about the purpose of planning, if you don't know exactly what we do. But our role is really to manage growth and change, and to deal with the risk and uncertainty about the future. I believe our role is to talk to residents, talk to elected officials. And by the way, if you don't know this, for some reason, although I'm retiring in June of this year, I decided to run for city council, and I won. So for elected officials in the room, I now understand your side of the table. I kept hearing my iPad dinging, and I opened up this morning, and there were over 600 emails on an issue about our airport taking over some land that was used temporarily as a park to expand the airport, and it's in the county. There's nothing I can do, but somehow they have my name, and you said, and so when I get back home, why did I do this? I'm like, so all my friends that know me said, or in Raleigh, it's like, why are you doing this? But thank you for doing this. So that's just on the side. But as a planner, I also believe of those that are involved in place building, that we're guardians of present and future generations. That's our role. We think about the future, we think about these emerging trends, and if we don't do it, who will? And I believe we have an obligation to share with the public and elected officials these emerging trends, because ultimately our goal is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And safety, that means we want to have our streets safe for people to move around our region. And then I had this saying I've used for years, that when you say no to something, because that is a very popular word, you're saying yes to something else. So I want to have a conversation. When I was in Raleigh, we're saying no to apartments. We don't want apartments. So I'm saying what you're really saying is seniors, young professionals, veterans, people with disabilities, we don't want you in our community. We have to understand when we say to no something, we're saying yes to something else. So within that backdrop, I had to focus on how do we now plan for the future of our cities, knowing we have 10,000 people a year coming, and not all of them want to own a home. So I want to talk about this Safe Streets Challenge, because that's why we're all here. Now, globally, you may not know this, but there are more than 1 million people who die on roads around the world every year. 1 million people die because of the way we design our streets and our mobility systems. And here in Palm Beach County, over 1,000 people, 1,000, were lost on roadways within the last 5 years. If we're truly committed for public health, safety, and welfare, we have to focus on how to provide a safer environment for our pedestrians and our cyclists in general. And on Florida roads, as you see here now, this is the entire state, there are 8 daily fatalities, 49 daily serious injuries in this state. And we certainly have to do better to make it a safer environment. Now, I'm not saying this to make you all feel bad, but I looked at the top 25 metropolitan areas that are the most dangerous in the U.S., and Florida, you got 9 of the top 25. So we have work to do, and you can see how we have to do a better job at protecting public health, safety, and welfare, so there's certainly some work to do. So I'm so glad that you were able to have this conference, to have this conversation, and again later today, you're going to go into a deeper dive. So just to share with you some of the common causes of these traffic facilities, this should be no surprise. Lack of sidewalks, which in our city is the #1 demand. When we do our capital planning, more sidewalks. Lack of accessible crossings, lack of protection, predictability, cycle facilities, poor intersection design, unsafe border areas, and surface hazards. So this is just a partial list. And as I said earlier, we can't do much on the federal level, but locally, these are things you can accomplish and you certainly can do. So let me now shift gears to talk about what we were able to do in Raleigh. I don't just like saying a comprehensive plan. I like to call it a blueprint for growth. And when I arrived in 2005, we were growing very rapidly. And the first thing we did in Raleigh was to do this capacity study to find out what we're going to look like in 20 years. How are we going to manage all this growth? So as we looked at where we were headed, we had 20,000 acres of land left to develop. We were building sprawl. I told you our nickname was Sprawly, 1,000 acres of year, which meant we had 20 years of growth left before we would literally run out of land. We were also running out of water. We had an historic drought in 2008, and we knew in order to grow, for businesses, for people, we needed water. And so we did our long projection and recognized we'd need roughly about 120,000 units, and we had to figure out where we're going to accommodate 170,000 jobs and also infrastructure and land. So we realized we had to do a plan so that we would know how we would grow. Another point which was key, we want to make sure we follow the plan. I believe there are two types of places. There are plan-making places that follow the plan, and then there are deal-making places that everything is transactional. And when I asked the community which ones do you think developers prefer, they said deal-making. I said no. They want predictability and certainty about the rules. They want to have a plan they can follow, and far too often we have conditional use zoning and variances and exceptions, and it makes the whole process unpredictable. Our goal was to have a plan-making city that would follow the plan. And so to do that, we wanted to kind of take a look at where we were and where we're going. So in 1950, the creation of the Research Triangle Park, which really defined our region, popped up in the 1950s. You're seeing the yellow at the top is Durham, the yellow at the bottom is Raleigh, and then that green one is the Research Triangle Park, which is its own authority. Because of its success of focusing on business and research and government, the region exploded. And by the 1970s, we started to see slowly, primarily single family, development started to expand our regions. And then we found out what happened in 2000, and it became the destination for people relocating across the country, and then you'll see how sprawl just started to occur. It's just like jelly, just spread out the whole region, but this is primarily the growth, and we started seeing traffic change dramatically. Did not have transit, and so when I became director in 2005, we projected what would our region look like by 2035 if we continue these same patterns. Just like this region in Florida, this is what it looked like. The jelly just spreads even further. So we said this is not the future we wanted. We had to pivot, we had to change, we had to have a better plan as we planned for our region. And so we looked within the city of Raleigh at our level of service in 2010. If you know what this is, green means traffic is moving, good levels of service. Yellow is caution, red is bad. If we did not intervene and do something with our plan, we knew that our region would be congested, had the same traffic, so we knew we could not build our way out of it. We had to be smarter and better about how we planned for our city. So back then, we launched this lecture series called Designing a 21st Century City. I was shocked that people were so hungry for a plan that people drove as far away as 90 miles to come to these events because there was nothing occurring at that time. And every session started with a question: how do we get there from here? How do we create walkable communities? And we really first started a conversation to educate the cities about the challenges we had and what we had to do. This was so successful. This was part of our engagement process as we launched the plan. And because we knew we had to reach all demographic groups, not just the older demographic, we had a series of events, one called Big Ideas. We got our millennials involved. I remember we had one of our sessions in the tavern. This dude said, "Man, this is so cool, drinking beer, walking over planning." We wanted to tap into everyone, and then we had this Kids City event. We brought the kids in, of course, their parents and guardians came, and this was the cutest thing ever. We took this museum, we took this tape to do blocks. You had to come to a table with your box and place it, but you had to get a permit in order to put your box on one of the lots. And I would tell the child, your use is non-conforming and not permitted in downtown. And The kid was crying and the parent like saying, "Are you serious?" I said, "Ma'am, there's a board of adjustment over there. You can appeal your case to get your building downtown." But it was a great opportunity to teach the young generation and the guardians about the importance of planning, and it was just so remarkable. We continue having these big ideas conversation for our city. It gets us very energized. We know exactly what we have to do as we grow. And so for us, it's just something that I encourage you as well. There's big ideas, there's small ideas, but you'll see in a second a lot of the change in our city was born out of these big ideas. Let's just have a conversation about what's possible. And so again, it still was beneficial. We're very fortunate that it wasn't just Raleigh, but the region. We had great regional cooperation for our metropolitan planning organization. And so we brought Urban Land Institute in, ULI, to do this exercise because we were growing. We knew it just couldn't be Raleigh, it was the region. And so have you ever done this exercise? Just raise your hands, it's ULI. Oh, a few people have. So what the exercise is that they give you a Lego block. The yellow represents residential, the red represents commercial, and they have these grids and they predict how you're going to grow. The challenge is you have to you can't leave any Legos on the table. You look at your region, you have to figure out where it's going to go, and it's a way of saying, okay, this is the growth that's coming. You can't just say, no, the growth is coming. And so we had 20 teams, and the winning team was the quality growth team called Vibrant Centers. I'm proud to say of the 20 teams, that was my team. And so as a region, we decided in order to accommodate this growth, we needed transit, vibrant centers, and green spaces. And basically that was an agreement the region had in order to accommodate this growth. I'll come back later on that transit piece because we kind of backslid a little bit. So for Raleigh, we decided to move forward with that blueprint for growth. We defined it on 6 key themes. The one to me that is so important, the coordinating land use and transportation, which really helped us define our city to be a plan-making city that we were able to follow through. Now, most of you don't know what a land use plan is, but basically this is a very specific plan that identifies where we want to grow to occur. Each color represents something, but I told my staff the average citizen will not know what this plan means. So we simplified it to what we called a growth framework map. We wanted to be a polycentric city, that everything wasn't just downtown, to have employment centers and growth centers and lifestyle centers where everyone could live. And you'll see those circles, those were our envisioned light rail transit stops, and that was how we were going to grow. 8 growth centers, 12 multimodal corridors within the city. And so this was basically the blueprint reused to grow our city, and we had recommended 65 to 70% of all growth will happen in these growth centers, and guess what? That's exactly what happened 20 years later. So knowing that we now had this blueprint, we had to go a little bit further. We didn't just want to have development, but we wanted to have great experience for people to live in, both living and traveling. And so we focused on this placemaking of creating great experiences, the power of 10, which I'll get to in a second. We don't just want to create a project, but a place. It had to be people-centered. I'll get to what Daniel talked about, a focus on the fun, happiness, and joy. And then in some cases, change would be incremental or small interventions. So we just double down on not just building, but how do we create a quality place where people want to grow, live, invest, and not leave. For me personally, I believe that people may eat and sleep in their homes and apartments, but they thrive in the public realm. That's where they live. That's where they want to go. And so we carefully understood that previous generations, my age, older generations, they were consumers of goods, but the newer generations are consumers of experiences. And so we shouldn't just be designers and planners, but we should also be experience builders. Whether it's for housing or neighborhoods or transportation, it's about the experience. When all of you choose to do something, you focus on the experience. Whether you're traveling or dining, it's about the experience. And so we focused on creating these polycentric places that have an experience. Now, getting back to the power of 10, if you hadn't heard about it, it's very simple. This came from Project for Public Space, that every city, town, village, or county should strive to have 10 destinations with 10 things to do within each destination. That's aspirational, and that's something that we tried to do. So within this blueprint for growth, we had a plan for action. We wanted to create great streets, places, and spaces, and we identified them. So it wasn't just this map with colors. We wanted to be very intentional about what we're going to do. And everything you now see is a result of that plan, not just transactional, but it was a plan. One of them, where I happened to live before I moved into my home, was a Smoky Hollow and the Line. This was a rendering before it was developed. It's now been developed, highly successful. Again, it did not exist. It was walkable, it was convenient, it was close to around downtown. One of our former shopping malls was transformed, and now this is now partially under construction in our Midtown location called the Innovation District. Walkable, accessible, it's one of those places that we had focused on to develop. And then our downtown just wasn't big enough, and now there's a project called Downtown South. This too is under construction. We're trying to build that facility as our local women's soccer stadium, a walkable environment that's safe, and now we're looking to have our bus rapid transit extending from downtown to this location. Again, these are all projects were conceived for a blueprint for growth, not just all downtown, but throughout our region. And then one of the newer ones that arrived on the scene is Seaboard Station. This was also an older industrial area at the edge of downtown. This just opened up this summer. Once again, it was all conceived by having that plan, that blueprint for growth. One we did not expect that wasn't on the plan was what we call the Ironworks District. It's on the edge of our downtown, but this is a location, once again, walkable, that you can get there. It's bikeable, and we just readapted some industrial buildings, and this is now one of the hottest, fastest growing locations in our downtown. One of the things that we're able to do, we all have aged out shopping centers. As planner, I decided to increase all the zoning around the shopping center as a way of reducing vehicle miles traveled. We looked at these aging shopping centers, allowed zoning. These are one of the projects near our village district. And what was great about it is that all those empty nesters living in these suburban homes decided to move to these projects because now they can live right next to the shopping, the libraries, and it captured all the trips internally. And this was an approach that's now being replicated throughout the region and throughout Raleigh. It's a way of providing an experience, but we're not adding any more traffic because people literally are walking to these destinations, and we're basically readapting and reimagining these aging strip malls and shopping centers that basically lost their purpose. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that when I was plan director, I was a visionary to reimagine our transportation hub. If you came to Raleigh, this was a sad way you would enter our city. This was our Amtrak station. And coming up with a vision of not just redesigning the station, but the entire district, we were able to come up with now a legitimate station called Raleigh Union Station. This is now constructed about 5 years ago. We took this shed that was hiding in plain sight, redeveloped it, and now this is a major, major hub for our transportation. Again, part of that vision for how we're going to grow our city. And this is a picture where it's located on the west side of our downtown. Walkable, and now we're building a bus transfer station right next to it to truly capture this as our regional hub. Now, a lot of people post-COVID, adding to the experience, Daniel said it, we need to focus on the fun, the happiness, and the joy. And when I was commissioner, I actually renamed our Parks Department the Department of Fun, Health, and Happiness. Every city should have a Department of Fun. Is there one here in this region? And we wanted to focus on making sure that people had that joy, that fun, that happiness. You'd be surprised during COVID when people say, how do we get people back to our downtown? Well, are your downtowns fun? Do people have joy? Are they happy? And so it's not often an equation that people look for. But for me, it was a big lesson because I was commissioner during COVID and the protests in New York. And so our department really doubled down on how we can provide more joy, more happiness, because our parks really became our sanctuaries of sanity. Little did I know during that time, there's something called the Trauma Stewardship Institute. And if you look at how they help people deal with trauma, it's to sleep, detox, be active, get outdoors. And so we were very focused on how do we provide that to our citizens and residents. So to me, the importance is the joy and the happiness. And so all these projects you're now going to see are driven by the private sector. This is one of our North Hills location. To amp up that joy, that happiness, these are people, places that provide an experience within all these growth centers. And again, this is not being done by the public sector. It's the private sector that see the value of creating these people gathering places that bring joy and happiness. Who knew synthetic turf in the middle of a shopping center would be a major destination? And you're now seeing this replicated project over project over project. These are safe, walkable environments that people can enjoy. And the newest one that came online, not far from Raleigh, is Fenton. Right now, it's 100% sold out, both residential and commercial. And these are now destinations that are safe environments where people can walk, also following that blueprint for growth of those safe centers. And I have to say, I'm so jealous of Cary because they have the coolest park we have ever seen in North Carolina if you come and visit. And if you don't think this is joy, just look at this man's face on this greenway. I mean, I'm a runner and a biker, but I'm not that happy. But, you know, this is what it's all about. When I was in New York, just to talk about what we're able to do, there was this great program called Sing for Hope. We had people donate a piano. We had artists. In fact, that's the artist who painted this piano. By the way, I don't know how to play, but it was a photo op. I had to pretend. And then what we do is a way of sharing that joy and hope is that we put these pianos all over the city. And you watch children, you watch experienced pianists play this, and you don't realize the little things you can do to make our streets, our public spaces livable. Just small interventions make such a big difference, and this is done every single year. Now, you may not be able to see this side, but Wallet Hub does this survey every year of the most fun cities in America. You may not see it, but Las Vegas, I get it, it's number one. Orlando's up there, but Atlanta's in the top 10. Somebody from Atlanta, how did Atlanta get on this list? Please, somebody tell me. But as you can see, San Francisco, Miami, I get it. New York, number 10. Raleigh, we're 50. We got work to do. Seriously, is anybody here from Atlanta? Oh, you are? Can I see you after this presentation? I've been to Atlanta. Okay, I'm sorry. And then if you're interested, there's also one for the happiest cities in Fresno. Never been there. So anyway, it's good to see this, look at the criteria, and to aspire, whether the happiest or the fun. But people pay attention to this. And so for us, I want to make sure Raleigh moves up the list. All right, so I'm going to move now on to what is this connecting land use and transportation and provide some more examples. What you're seeing to me is a transformative project. I am so jealous of Charlotte. This is Charlotte's light rail line, and it transformed the south end of that city. It's livable, it's access, and you can see how it really started to shape the city on the south end. While we were planning it in North Carolina and Raleigh, Charlotte was doing it, and so every time I see this slide, I am absolutely so jealous. But the point I want to make is this connection between transportation and land use is that transportation drives land use, and land use drives transportation. Now we're in a process in Raleigh of looking again at the right mode for the right place, and so we're exploring everything from heavy rail to light rail, not ferry. I put that one in there for you. We have no water in Raleigh, really, except creeks, but that bus, bicycles, and so we're really taking a hard look on offering those mobility options to amp up that experience so people now have choices, not just using their car. So getting back to the land use and transportation, land use map, we want to take a different look on how transportation helps fulfill this vision. As I stated, the goal was all those circles. We were on board to get funding for our light rail station. We passed this half-cent sales tax, but then Duke University and the state combined killed the project. That was right when I left from Raleigh to New York. And for now, light rail is dead. We are looking at some heavy rail, but now as council member, I want to bring back the conversation about light rail. What I loved about Raleigh is that we had a multidisciplinary approach. We weren't siloed. The planners worked with the transportation planners to conceive all these plans. This is the Blue Ridge Corridor study that we really pushed to start to urbanize corridors to make it more walkable. This was work I did about 12 years ago. One of the recommendations was to create this entertainment district. This is one of our new growth centers. And I'm so pleased, about a month ago, our hockey team, the Carolina Hurricanes, it's now called the Lenovo Set. I heard that. Didn't y'all win the Stanley Cup? Like, please. Congratulations, Florida. And now we're working with the Lenovo Center to create one of those growth districts around this corridor that's walkable, that's bikeable, and now we're looking at the transit connection. Again, having that plan, everything falls through. You're going to hear from Dan Burton later. He's here. He came to Raleigh, North Carolina. This is one of our exciting streets. Wouldn't you want to go there? Great experience and watch cars go by. Yeah. The sad thing is this is the front door to our North Carolina State University. I don't remember, Dan, how many. It was the most dangerous street in North Carolina. The number of students being killed or injured on this street. So Dan came in, we talked about what we can do to really change this street. That's when I came in and came up with a vision. I didn't want 6 roundabouts, but that's what it took. And so going through a series of meetings, there were 2 travel lanes in each direction. And so we decided to totally change the street to make it more people focused. And you see the plan. It took some time to build it. Ultimately, there were 6 roundabouts. And this is what it looks like today. We removed a travel lane in each direction. We put in a median. And now all development on this core just started to go vertical. Hotels and restaurants, and now it became a thriving location just by changing the transportation network. And now it's safer. We no longer seeing students hit or killed. It is totally transformed. Now, I'm going to show you that this was an exciting vision. As I told you, we had our whole transit map. We looked at New York City and came up with our own cool transit map. This didn't work. It failed. But we were so committed to look at transportation options that the same growth framework plan lended itself to a bus rapid transit system. And so this is what was planned. We have a north-south, east-west, and I'm proud to say that we did get funding for 2 routes on the BRT. And the first one right now is out to bid. So if you're a contractor, come to look at Raleigh's website. We're now looking for funding to build this bus rapid transit. There is so much excitement along this corridor. It's going to transform the New Bern corridor going into downtown, and then we're going to start the western leg. And so me, this is something that is terribly exciting that is now underway, all starting with a blueprint for growth, understanding the land use transportation connection, and now we're starting to see our city transform because we're now ready for that growth. I'm watching the time. As I just want to put a little plug. As Parks Commissioner, we came up with something so innovative. We wanted to make sure that we reimagine the public realm. In every city, park, or in any city on average, 40% of your assets, streets, sidewalks are in the public realm. In New York City, we wanted to reclaim that for people and came up with this amazing program called Parks Without Borders. We did not let transportation govern the streets alone by themselves, and so we reimagined streets and sidewalks to be a seamless public realm. And I can't begin to tell you that program still continues, and now the mayor, which was my recommendation, created a czar of the public realm. Now transportation, parks, and other departments have to answer to one czar. Now, I don't know how that's working. I tried the check, but some great things are happening. And here's some examples. This was just underperforming asphalt, and now is created into this amazing people place. So I'm going to close now because I see the time. Truly understanding the value of land. Please pay attention. If you're an elected official, please pay attention to this. So land equals property and sales tax revenue. As I said earlier, land is a finite resource, it's a commodity. And the way you regulate it could either increase or decrease value, increase or decrease quality of life. So when I was planning director, I got so frustrated. People said, stop investing in downtown, what about us? And so we had to share with them that one of our downtown high-rises on 3 acres can pay off this infrastructure, that a single family home, 600 on 150 acres, equals a tax value of 1 acre downtown. 150 acres equals the value of 1 acre downtown. That one high-rise downtown had 90 times the tax value as a suburban acre. We went further to say a downtown high-rise on a 3-acre site can pay off its infrastructure in 3 years. Return on investment, 35%. That same suburban multifamily complex on 30 acres, it would take 42 years to pay off its infrastructure. Return on investment, 2%. So we said, if you do not support downtown development or these dense locations, I'll pay the taxes as a homeowner. I'll pay it. We don't want to do that. So right now, as a council member, we're bringing this back up again because the city council lost that. And anytime we put it in an investment, we're expecting higher density so we can help offset taxes and keep taxes in our community low. I'll go through this very quickly. Basically, we looked at a Walmart and we looked at a downtown. We realized Walmart sits on 34 acres, but the tax it collects per acre is $6,500. A 6-story building downtown, 10 times the amount. But what about jobs? Well, that Walmart creates 6 jobs per acre. That 6-story mixed-use building, 74. So we want to be smarter about how we as government and council allow density on land. And so we looked at our jurisdiction that at Walmart, we looked at what is the yield per acre annually. The Walmart's about $2,000. A single-family home is $2,800. That 6-story mixed-use building, $110,000. We have to be more entrepreneurial as government because my goal is to keep taxes low. And we do it by smart planning and connecting land use and transportation to make sure that we're a much more of a viable city. I wanted to communicate, this is a chart that shows the land value. If it's purple, it's high. People could not see it, so I asked my staff, put it in 3 dimensions. Look at the tax value of our downtown generating for the entire city. It has helped subsidizing all the things we need and to do was right there. Now, had we done the light rail system as I had recommended, I'm going to show you the return on investment that we would have captured had we done it. And there it is. And so I'm bringing this subject up again. Yes, we're getting bus rapid transit. It's not going to yield the same return on investment. It's something, but to me, the bus rapid transit is a placeholder before we get our light rail. So I'm going to conclude my presentation. I just want to say it's important that we understand a blueprint for growth. We understand the importance of creating experience. We need to be guardians and protectors of the public health, safety, and welfare. You have some emerging trends in your community, and all I can tell you is that smart places know their sense of urgency 10 years before it's urgent. And Florida, I know you're smart. Thank you all very much.
All right, one more round of applause for Mitchell. So Mitchell, actually, if you want to stay up, we have time for 1 or 2 questions.
I went over time, sorry.
No, that's great. Yep. Actually, it's not showing up here, so if you want to show me that. I have to say that when I am here, I feel like I'm in college. I'm like writing down feverishly because this is all new for me. I do have one on Slido, and then I saw one hand up here, and those would be our questions. All right, so the first one says, Mitchell, what would you say is a top priority action decision makers can make and advocate for today to plan for the increasing population of older adults?
Ooh. Wow.
Wow,
Let me take a second to process that. For older adults, I think for one, speak to them and recognize the choices they want. A lot of them want to be independent, and most do not want to live at the edge of town where they have to be on a van to shop and experience life. I think for them, and critical important is how do you ingrain them in one of these lifestyle centers where they can be independent, have walkable access to food and libraries and services. So I think for me, understand isolation is a huge issue. The fact that they'll have limited mobility is a huge issue. And start to offer other alternatives that are not these giant senior places on the edge of town that they have to bust themselves in. make sure if you do that, they have access to all the services so they can live out their years in dignity. So I would say just focus on their lifestyle choices, that they have better access to walkable options and not just being vanned somewhere to experience life.
That's great.
That was a good question, though.
And I have to say, one of the most shocking things about your presentation that I learned was that in 2050, I'll be over 85. I just realized that I was doing the math. I was like, oh, wait, that's me.
That's you.
And also, most likely, I'll be single. Also, is what I learned today.
Newsflash, our wives outlive us, men. Sorry.
Yes.
From here, she has a great booming voice.
I thought I was using my outdoor voice. I am Mayor Maria Marino of Palm Beach County. Thank you for being here today, and congratulations on being a newly elected.
Thank you.
So your comment about projects driven by private sector,
Yes.
because you know everybody comes to government to answer and fulfill all of their problems. How did you get those projects to be driven by private sector?
Well, one, the Research Triangle Park formed this relationship between public, business, and universities, so it's part of our DNA. We establish we don't see developers at the development community as the enemy. We see them as partners. We put out a plan, they fulfill it by following the plan. So, number one. Number two, they understand the value of creating these great places. They become people gathering places. That's where people want to be. So from their point of view, it works. It's our job to help them be successful and not get in the way. We often advocate for these great walkable communities, but it's easier to do greenfield development. Anytime they want to do something urban that's walkable, that's great, we make it difficult. So we have to help facilitate and be their partner to make great things happen. They voluntarily understand the value of these private open spaces that they make public. They become gathering places. They make these polycentric growth centers work and become destinations. And now our Midtown, which is primarily private, is almost outperforming our downtown because it offers so many great amenities. So one is to see them as partners and not the enemy. Very often the public sees developer as greedy. No. They're our partners. We come up with a plan, but we need them to help fulfill that plan. So if we truly believe in public-private partnerships, it's everything you see on the slide. We want to make sure we help facilitate it, get out of the way, and help be a partner to make these great things happen. And it's happening throughout the region. Most innovation in our region is all those great things are coming out of the private sector, not the public sector. We just want to make sure we help them be successful because all of us benefit from having these great destinations, that power of 10 that I talked about.
All right. Give another hand for Mitchell Silver.